Welcome guys, in this video let's see one more built-in directive provided by Angular, which is ngFor. This is also a structural directive which lets you repeat a certain section of your UI in the template. So let's jump right on to the usability of ngFor. This is part of the video series Angular course. If you have not watched the earlier videos, you can go through them for a better understanding. Let's say we have list of weekdays that we want to display, or probably we could have list of cities, list of countries, list of employees, and all such lists that you can think of. One way of doing this is to repeat your code again and again so that you can display all the data. But this is neither a practical nor a clever solution to this problem. This is where you need to use ngFor to reduce your effort of coding and also to make your code neat and clean. Let's say we have this information stored somewhere in our app component.ts file in one of the property, which is weekdays. So here we have an array of string which holds the information. We just need a way to display this information in our template. Let's see how we can achieve that using ngFor. To do that, we just have to use only one h2 tag, because that is what we are going to repeat for each of these data, and we are going to apply the ngFor within our h2 tag. This is the syntax of ngFor. Let us try to understand this. As ngFor is a structural directive, that means it changes the layout or structure of your DOM. It is preceded with this asterisk sign, then the directive name itself, which is ngFor, then after the equal sign we have an expression. This expression here is not that difficult to understand if we try to break it down properly. So weekdays is the variable that we have defined in our TypeScript file. So this is basically our data source from which all the data is coming. But we have to find a way to iterate through each of these elements and display the element one at a time. This is the way of iterating those elements. So we have defined one more variable, which is day, and the way to define a variable in JavaScript is let the variable name, right? So this is your JavaScript syntax, let day of weekdays. So what will happen is in each iteration this variable will hold one weekday at a time. So in the first iteration the value of day variable will be Sunday, in the next iteration the day variable will be Monday, and so on. And here we are just using string interpolation to display the day variable. That is how your ngFor works and displays the list of days. And if you look in the developer console, you will see that you have 7 h2 tags here, though you have used only one h2 tag in your template. That is the power of ngFor. It greatly reduces your development effort and yet can render thousands of similar elements. ngFor also comes with few additional information apart from the actual data that you are displaying. For example, you need to get hold of the current index of the iteration. You can do that using this kind of syntax. ngFor gives you access to the special variable index which holds the current index of the iteration, and that has been stored into a separate variable I. So if we want to print the current index of the iteration, we can print it using the string interpolation. So it should print the index number, then space, then our day, and the index starts from 0. As we have 7 elements in the array, it goes up to 6. We also have few more special such variable. One of them is first. You have to use the similar syntax that you have used earlier. So this is your special variable followed by an as, then your local variable, which is f, and that is the value that you are going to use inside the loop. So first basically denotes whether the current element is the first element or not. So this is basically a boolean value. Let's see the result. As you can see, for the first element the value of this is true, for the other element it is false. Without surprise, we also have a last element that we can print. This will be true for the last element. We also have odd and even variable. This will show that whether the current element is an odd index or an even index. So as we are using odd, for 0th element it would be false, for the first element it is true, and so on. You can find the list of all such special variable in the Angular documentation, which enlists index, which we have already seen. It also gives you a count, which gives the length of the iterable. It also gives you first, last, even and odd. Now these elements might be of use if you want to apply certain style based on the position of the element. Probably in the first element you want to apply certain top margin, or probably on the event element you want to apply a background color. So those will be possible using these special variables. You can also use pipe along with ngFor. One of the useful pipe which can be used with ngFor is slice. So our slice pipe takes two arguments. One is the beginning index and the other is the ending index. The first index is inclusive, that means your for loop will include that element. The end index is exclusive, that means the end element will be excluded. That means it will actually render 4 elements starting from 0 up to 3. And that's why we have 4 elements here. Now one very important use case is to use ngIf along with ngFor. Now this is one common scenario where we might want to render a certain element within our for loop based on certain condition. To display an element based on certain condition, we have to take the help of ngIf, but the problem is we cannot apply two structural directive in a single element. Let me show you what problem do we face. So here using the ngIf, we are trying to render the days excluding Sunday. But if we try to save this, it will say that property day does not exist in your app component. So this day variable here is not recognized. Then how can we achieve this kind of functionality? For that, you can go by this approach. Now our code compiles and it excludes Sunday from our list. Let's try to understand how did we achieve this. Here we have introduced a new element, ngContainer. Now ngContainer is an element that is provided by your Angular library, and it is just like a blank container. It does not have any UI associated with it. So if your ngIf section here turns out to be true, then this element will be rendered, otherwise it will not be rendered. And since we are using this day variable inside our h2 tag, day variable is now known to our ngIf, and hence it is not throwing any error. Now let us see how we can actually iterate list of objects instead of list of primitive values. So I have taken an array of user which holds a little more complex data structure than the earlier example. It has a name and age for each of the user. So instead of iterating the weekdays, now I will iterate the users, and our local iteration variable should be a little more meaningful, say user. Here we cannot directly print the user because user is an object. Here we can print the username by using the dot operator, and you can see it has printed the name of the users. I would like to give you a task based on the knowledge that you already have. So let's say I want to color this h2 element based on the age of the user. If the age of the user is greater than 18, I want the name of the user to be colored as green. If it's less than 18, then I want to color it as red. You can pause the video and try it out yourself, and when you're done, you can check the answer. Are you done? Well, this will be my approach. So we have two options to choose from to apply dynamic style to our HTML element. One is ngClass and the other is ngStyle. Since our requirement is pretty straightforward, I will go with ngStyle. So this is our ngStyle directive, and the CSS property that we want to modify is the color, and here we are using a ternary operator. I have discussed how a ternary operator works in my previous ngStyle video. If you have not watched it already, you can have a look. So it says basically if the age is greater than 18, then apply a color green, otherwise you can apply a color of red. And since only one of our user is older than 18, it is colored as green. The other two users are red. Now let me wrap up this video by showing you the expanded format of ngFor. So when you write a ngFor block similar to this, it's get converted to this expanded format by your Angular compiler. Let's try to understand this expanded format. So it has a ng template over which two directives are applied. One is ngFor and the other is ngFor off. And this ngFor off takes our data source, which is the array of days. And we also have the two local variables that we defined in our ngFor. One is day, which is converted to let-day, and the other is the index, which is converted to let-i. And then within the ng template, we have our h2 tag. And this is how it gets rendered into your page. Now you don't have to use this format. This is just to make you understand that any structured directive is basically an attribute directive which has its own ng template. That's it for now. In the next video, we will cover the one remaining built-in directive, which is ngSwitch, and with that we will finish our built-in directives in Angular. The snippet of various examples are attached in the description. You can check out and play around with it. And if you like my content, please subscribe the channel and share my work among your colleagues or friends. That will really help the channel. So I'll catch you later in the next video.